My name is Daniel Morales. They erased me like I never existed, until I became someone they needed. My own family tried to steal my story and profit from my pain. But I stayed quiet, gathered proof, and took back everything they thought they could claim. This isn't just revenge, it's my truth, and it's unstoppable. Here's my family betrayal and revenge story. In a small two-bedroom house off Indiana Street in East LA, I grew up surrounded by the sounds of blaring horns, tamales steaming in backyard pots, and my own quiet resentment. My name is Daniel Morales, and I was the middle child in a family that never seemed to have room for three. My brother Eric was born first. He had my dad's swagger and my mom's approval wrapped around his finger. He was a natural athlete, the kind of kid who could trip over a rock and still land in praise. When he got a B in school, they celebrated like he'd won a scholarship. When I got an A, they barely looked up. Then came Sophia, the youngest, and instantly the princess. By the time she was walking, she was also getting away with everything. She could lie, break things, throw tantrums, and still get a kiss on the forehead and a plate of her favorite arroz con leche. I, on the other hand, learned early that the quieter I was, the easier it was to survive. At the dinner table, I sat in the middle but was spoken to the least. If I tried to talk about school, my dad would grunt. If I mentioned film or writing, my mom would sigh. They never said I was stupid. That would have been too obvious. Instead, they pretended I wasn't there. By the time I turned 15, I had mastered invisibility. I could go an entire weekend without anyone asking where I was or what I was doing. And truthfully, that hurt more than being yelled at. Because it meant I didn't matter. The only place I felt seen was behind a camera. I'd saved up for a used Canon DSLR, filming my neighborhood, school events, street art, anything. I'd upload my edits to a private YouTube channel, and sometimes I'd get a few views, a few comments from strangers who saw something in me. It felt like a secret escape hatch. Like proof I existed, even if my family didn't notice. One night, I stayed up editing a short film for a school contest, my first real shot at something beyond East LA. I was so proud. I showed it to my parents over dinner. My dad didn't even finish watching. My mom just asked if I'd remembered to take the trash out. That was when I realized, in this house, effort didn't earn love. Only obedience did. And I wasn't built for that, so I stopped trying. I focused on the world outside those walls. Teachers, mentors, classmates, anyone who gave me more than a glance. I built my future in the shadows of a family that barely noticed I was growing up. I wasn't the screw-up. I wasn't the favorite. I was the one they forgot to see, but one day, I'd make sure they couldn't ignore me again, not ever. When I got my acceptance letter from UCLA, I read it 3 times in my bedroom before saying a word. My hands were shaking. It was everything I'd worked for, late nights editing student films, long hours filming quinceañeras just to afford gas and gear. I had done it. I got in. I expected something. A smile. We're proud of you. Maybe even a hug. Instead, when I told my parents at dinner that night, my mom kept scraping her plate like I hadn't said anything. My dad finally looked up and said, "UCLA's expensive. You gonna pay for that yourself?" "I got financial aid," I said, forcing a smile. "And I've been saving." Eric laughed under his breath. "Man's gonna waste 4 years making YouTube videos." Sophia, of course, took it as a personal offense. "So you're leaving? Just like that? What about Mom and Dad? You're just gonna forget us?" Forget them? They'd never remembered me in the first place, but that was the moment it clicked for me. My success didn't make them proud. It made them uncomfortable. I wasn't following the script. I wasn't staying in the neighborhood, working a trade, maybe settling down with someone from church. I wasn't living their version of a good, quiet life. I was breaking the mold, and they hated me for it. Still, I left. UCLA was only 20 miles away, but it felt like another universe. The campus buzzed with people chasing stories, chasing careers, chasing something bigger. For the first time, I was around people who cared about the things I did: cinematography, storytelling, creating emotion out of light and angles and sound. I belonged, but every time I called home, it was the same. Short calls. Cold voices. The one time I invited them to see a short film screening, they didn't show. No excuse. Just silence. Eric had started managing my dad's shop by then. Every now and then, he'd post something on Facebook like, "Real work doesn't happen behind a camera." Sophia was working as a receptionist in Glendale, living at home, and constantly reminding me how Hollywood changes people. The truth is, they didn't want me to succeed. Not because they didn't love me, but because my success threatened their version of what we were supposed to be. I didn't just leave East LA, I left them behind. And I think part of them never forgave me for it. I started avoiding their calls. Holidays passed. Birthdays, too. Eventually, it was easier not to think about them at all, but deep down, I still wanted them to see me. To finally see me, not as the quiet, weird kid with a camera, but as someone who made it, someone they should have believed in, before it was too late. After I moved out for UCLA, the silence came fast and easy. It wasn't like we had long, tearful phone calls before. My family wasn't wired that way. No check-ins, no "how are you holding up?" Not even on birthdays. At first, it hurt more than I wanted to admit, but eventually. Silence became a kind of peace. College was brutal. I wasn't the rich film kid with a trust fund and a Canon C300. I was the broke one juggling work-study shifts, freelance editing gigs, and night classes just to keep my head above water. There were days I lived off instant ramen and Red Bulls, sleeping 3 hours a night on an old futon in a shared apartment with 2 other guys. But for the first time, the pain felt worth it, because it was mine. My struggle. My growth. While other students made short films about romantic breakups or car chases, I told stories about broken homes, about being invisible, about trying to earn love that never came. My professors called my work raw and honest. One even called it quietly powerful. I held on to that for months. After graduation, I didn't move back home. I didn't even tell them I'd walked across the stage. I scraped together enough from editing gigs to rent a tiny studio apartment in Koreatown. It had roaches, no AC, and paper-thin walls, but it was mine. Every inch of it. Every late-night project, every rejection email, every tiny freelance win, it all built me. Brick by brick. I didn't hear from my family much during those years. Sophia sent a text once after my name popped up in the end credits of a Netflix docuseries I'd helped edit. Just a single line: "Wow, you're still doing that film thing." No congratulations. No pride. Just passive interest, like I was an old high school classmate. Eric never reached out. But I'd hear through friends back home that he'd taken over the family shop completely. Some said he was doing well. Others said he was coasting. I didn't care enough to check. Mom called me on Christmas one year. I let it go to voicemail. It was a minute-long guilt trip wrapped in a prayer. I never responded. I told myself I didn't need them. I had my work. I had new friends. Chosen family. Creative collaborators who believed in me, who cheered when my short film screened at a local festival, who cried with me when it got rejected from Sundance. People who saw me. I was alone, yeah. But I wasn't lost. Those years were quiet. Not peaceful, but productive. I grew into someone my childhood self wouldn't even recognize. Stronger. Sharper. Self-made, and still, deep down, I knew that silence wouldn't last forever, because people like them, they always come back. When they need something. It started with a message on Instagram. "Hey Danny. Long time no talk. Just saw your name in the credits of Southland Shadows. That was you? So proud. Blue heart, let's catch up soon." Sophia. I stared at the message for a full minute. Not because I was surprised she reached out, but because I knew exactly what it meant. Something had changed. Southland Shadows was my first real break as an assistant producer. It wasn't huge, but it had buzz. People in the industry were talking. And apparently, so was my family. I didn't reply. But a week later, I got a call from an unknown number. It was my mom, Mijo. She said like no time had passed. "I saw your show on Netflix. I told all the ladies at the clinic, that's my son. I'm so proud of you, baby." Proud? When I left home, she wouldn't even look me in the eye. I could still remember her voice saying, "You think you're too good for us." When I packed my bags for UCLA, but now I was successful. Now I was worth knowing again. She invited me to Sophia's birthday barbecue in Highland Park. "Just a small thing, nothing big," she said. "The whole family will be there. We'd love to see you." I almost didn't go. But curiosity won, when I pulled up to the house. It was like stepping into a parallel universe. My brother Eric was standing at the grill like the king of suburbia, dressed in a Dodgers jersey and smiling like we were best friends. Sophia ran out and hugged me like we'd grown up close. My mom kissed my cheek and introduced me to people I'd never met, cousins, friends of friends, neighbors, each time saying, "This is my son, the filmmaker." I played along. Smiled. Laughed when I needed to. Nodded when people said things like, "Man, your family talks about you all the time." But beneath it all, I could feel it, the performance. They weren't here because they missed me. They were here because my name had value now. I could help them brag. Make them look good. Be the golden child they never expected. Eric pulled me aside later that afternoon. "We should talk sometime," he said casually. "I've got a media idea I'm trying to get off the ground. Could use a guy like you." A guy like me. That's when I knew, this wasn't a reunion, it was a recruitment. They didn't want me back in their lives. They wanted the version of me they could use. The version who'd made it. The success story they hadn't earned, but suddenly wanted to claim. And even though I smiled, shook hands, and stayed polite, something dark settled in my chest that day. They had forgotten me when it mattered most, and now, they were going to remember me for the wrong reasons. After the barbecue, I started getting texts from Sophia almost daily. Links to local articles, inspirational quotes, even old childhood photos. My mom called more in 2 weeks than she had in the last 5 years. Even Eric added me on LinkedIn and messaged, "We should collaborate soon. Got big ideas." It was like being adopted by strangers who happened to share my blood. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe they were finally trying to make things right. Maybe the years apart had given them perspective. Maybe, just maybe, they were proud, but the feeling wouldn't leave me. Something about it all felt off, too coordinated. Too convenient. Then one night, I got a DM from Maya, an old classmate from UCLA who now worked in development for a streaming platform. "Hey, just wondering, are you attached to the Morales docuseries pitch? The one from your brother?" I read the message 3 times before responding. "Wait, what docuseries?" She sent me the pitch deck. I scrolled through the file. My stomach turning with every slide. There it was, a gritty story about a Latino filmmaker from East LA who defied the odds, struggled with poverty, and rose from family dysfunction to industry success. They even used stills from my student films and behind-the-scenes shots from Southland Shadows, things I had never shared publicly. The title, Real Life, From Broken to Big Time. Eric had pitched my life as his original concept. My struggle. My work. My pain. He even labeled himself as the executive producer and lead creative. There wasn't a single mention of me, except as the inspiration. That word cut deeper than anything. Inspiration. Not creator. Not collaborator. Just the backstory. The fuel for his fake rise. Suddenly, everything made sense. The barbecue. The sudden affection. The let's collaborate talk. It wasn't about rebuilding family. It was about gathering intel. I sat in my apartment, fists clenched, jaw tight, replaying every moment I had spent hoping for their approval. I had wanted so badly for them to care. For them to see me, and now they had, only through a lens they could control. A version of me they could sell. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I got quiet. Focused. That night, I started pulling receipts, timestamps, old scripts, emails, file metadata. I compiled everything that proved I had lived this story. Written it. Shot it. Bled for it, because if Eric wanted to play producer, he'd picked the wrong person to steal from. This wasn't about jealousy. It wasn't even about justice, this was about identity. Ownership. And the betrayal that cut deeper than being forgotten, being erased. They had tried to use my silence, but now, I was ready to speak. After I read Eric's pitch deck, something in me shifted. I didn't rage. I didn't block them or confront him like I wanted to. I did what every good filmmaker knows how to do, I kept the camera rolling. Even when things got ugly, so I played the part, the good son. The long-lost brother. The one who finally came home. I started showing up more. Sunday carne asadas at my parents' house in East LA, Sophia's engagement party in Pasadena. A family business lunch Eric invited me to in Culver City, where he conveniently brought along his so-called creative partner, Daniel. Eric clapped me on the back like we were childhood best friends. Glad you made it, bro. Just spitballing ideas today, but we'd love to pick your brain. I smiled and nodded, like I didn't know he had already tried to sell my life behind my back. Oh, I said, real casual, what kind of ideas? He pulled out his iPad. Same deck. Same story. Same stolen details dressed up with studio polish. But this time, he tried to sell it to me like I was the newcomer. We think this kind of authentic, underdog story will really resonate with viewers, his partner chimed in. Especially with your background. You could be a consultant, maybe even do a cameo. A cameo. In my own story, I leaned in, pretending to be intrigued. So who's writing the episodes? We are, Eric said. But we'd love your input. You know, to make it more real. I didn't say much else. Just nodded, took mental notes, and smiled like I was flattered. Like I didn't know they were digging their own graves. After that lunch, I started recording everything. Phone calls. Zoom meetings. Emails. Texts. I let them brag. Let them expose themselves. And they did, willingly. Eric sent me updated scripts, asking for feedback. I made notes with time-stamped replies. I even emailed myself backups of every file, every version. I wanted a paper trail that didn't just show he was inspired by me, I wanted to prove theft. One day, Sophia accidentally sent me a Dropbox link intended for someone else. Inside were internal notes on how to position Daniel as a character without giving him ownership. That was the final confirmation I needed. This wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a heist. They wanted the story, but not the scars. The brand, but not the blood. They wanted to use my pain as decoration. I played my role perfectly. I posed for family photos. I toasted to fake futures. I let them think they had me wrapped around their fingers. And all the while, I was building a case they couldn't wiggle out of, because if they wanted to treat my life like a script, I was about to hand them a rewrite they'd never see coming. I knew better than to make a scene. That's what they would have expected, an emotional outburst they could spin as jealousy or bitterness. But I wasn't that kid anymore. I wasn't the invisible son trying to be seen. I was the man who had learned how to let silence speak louder than screams, so I got smart. I reached out to Vanessa Ruiz, a no-nonsense entertainment attorney I'd met during a networking mixer in West Hollywood. She specialized in IP protection and had a reputation for making problems disappear before they ever reached the public. After I laid everything out, emails, the stolen pitch deck, script drafts, even recordings of Eric calling it his concept, she looked me dead in the eye and said, this isn't just theft. It's fraud. And we're going to kill it. We filed a cease and desist within a week, addressed directly to the streaming platform, Eric, and his creative partner. It was calm, professional, and absolutely devastating. The platform responded first. They froze all development tied to the project. I heard from Maya, my friend on the inside, that legal flagged the whole pitch as potential liability. Good. Next came the panic. Eric called me 7 times in one night. I didn't answer a single call. Sophia left voicemails that started sweet and ended in full-blown accusations. Why are you doing this to us? You could have just talked to him. You're being dramatic, Daniel. It was just a pitch. But it wasn't just a pitch. It was my life. Then came the email from Eric himself. Bro, can we meet? We're family. We can work this out. Now he wanted to remember we were brothers. I forwarded it to Vanessa. By the time the dust started to settle, his project was dead. Word had spread through the local production circuit, and his name was unofficially blacklisted. Nobody wanted to touch someone involved in an IP theft scandal, especially not in LA, where stories were currency and betrayal traveled faster than light. Vanessa and I also made sure I reclaimed my materials. Every photo, script sample, even my student work, wiped from their vision. Legally and publicly. And the best part, I didn't have to raise my voice once, no viral callouts. No exposés. Just facts, dates, signatures, and a quiet, surgical strike. I didn't do it to ruin Eric. I didn't even do it for revenge, I did it to remind them all that I wasn't background anymore. I wasn't just the quiet one they could mold into whatever they needed, I was the creator. The owner. The author of this story. And now, I was finally writing it on my terms. I never planned to share my side of things publicly. I had one. Eric's project was dead, my work was protected, and my family had backed off. For the first time in years, I felt like I could finally breathe, but then came the questions. Friends. Industry peers. Old classmates. Even a few journalists. Is it true your brother tried to steal your story? Are you going to talk about it? Will you ever tell your version? I stayed silent at first, unsure if opening that door would just bring more chaos. But something inside me kept nagging, some unfinished ache that wouldn't let go. Then one night, I set up my camera in my Koreatown apartment. No script. No lighting crew. Just me, sitting in front of the lens, speaking from the place I used to hide. I didn't name names. I didn't drag anyone. I just told the truth. I talked about growing up in East LA. About always being overlooked, about dreaming of a different life behind the camera. I talked about the silence, the rejection, the subtle ways a family can break your spirit without ever raising a hand. And then I talked about the betrayal, how someone I used to call me Humano tried to rewrite my story without me in it. I hit upload at 2:12 a.m., then closed my laptop and went to bed thinking maybe 10 people would watch it. By morning, it had 40,000 views. By the end of the week, over 2 million, the comments came fast. Strangers from all over the world sharing their own stories, of being overlooked, underestimated, replaced. I felt this in my bones. This is my family too. You told the story, I was too scared to speak out loud. People didn't care about the drama. They cared about the truth. It wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about visibility. Finally being seen, not as a side character in someone else's narrative, but as the protagonist of my own. A producer from a major network reached out a week later. She said, Daniel, your story isn't just powerful, it's necessary. And this time, I didn't have to fight for a seat at the table. I was already sitting at the head of it. Eric tried to frame me as a background character. He wanted to market my pain without my permission, but now, my pain had become power. My silence had turned into a story. And the world didn't just see me, they heard me, loud and clear. There's something strange about getting everything you ever worked for, and realizing the people who should be proud of you are the ones who tried to take it away. After the video went viral and the docuseries got greenlit, my version, told the right way, my phone didn't stop buzzing. Collaborators, producers, even film students reached out to say how much the story meant to them. But not a word from my family, no apology. No explanation. Just silence. For once, it didn't hurt. It felt like freedom, because the truth is, I stopped needing their approval a long time ago. I just didn't know it yet. I used to think family was automatic. That no matter how badly they treated you, you were supposed to stay loyal. That love meant bending, shrinking, folding into the version of yourself they found most convenient, but now I know better. Family isn't about who shares your last name. It's about who shows up when it counts. Who celebrates your wins without trying to steal them. Who holds you when you're broken and reminds you of your worth without needing to benefit from it. And I found that kind of family, just not in the house I grew up in. I found it in college, staying up late in edit labs with classmates who became my brothers and sisters. I found it in small creative collectives across LA, people who let me crash on their couches, who offered me camera gear before I could afford my own. I found it in a mentor who believed in my voice before I did. I found it in myself. Eric still hasn't faced me. I heard through the grapevine he tried pitching another series, this time about the power of forgiveness. It tanked. No surprise there, Sophia's engagement quietly fell apart a few months after my video went viral. She blocked me on everything, which honestly felt like closure. And my parents? My mom left one final voicemail. A quiet apology. Buried in guilt, framed as confusion, we didn't know how to love you the right way, Mijo. I guess we thought you'd come back eventually. I didn't call her back, I wasn't angry anymore. I just didn't want to go back to being invisible. Now, I walk into studio meetings and people know my name. Not because of controversy, not because of clicks, but because of truth. Because I created something real. And I did it without shortcuts, without stealing, without faking it, without them. The funny thing is, I don't even feel like I got revenge. I got something better, peace, and the quiet, steady joy of knowing they couldn't erase me, because I was never gone, I was just becoming who I was always meant to be.